Hello students, we are continuing with lesson 6 Weathering the Storm in Ersama from our book Moments, and in our last video we have seen that finally Prashant reached his village Kalikutta after overcoming all the difficulties, but on reaching his village his heart sank when he found that all the houses were washed away, only few belongings were there, and no house and people were there to be seen. Then he decided to go to the Red Cross shelter to look for his family. See now, among the first people he saw in the crowd was his maternal grandmother, and among the first people, the first person he saw was his maternal grandmother, mean his mother's mother, weak with hunger. She was weak with hunger. She rushed to him, her hands outstretched, her eyes brimming. Outstretched means spread out. And when his maternal grandmother, she saw Prashant, she came, she rushed, she ran towards him with her hands spread and her eyes were filled with tears. It was a miracle. It was just miraculous. It was a wonder. They had long given him up for dead because they have thought that Prashant might have died, and they considered him to be died. Quickly word spread and his extended family gathered around him and hugged him tight in relief. Quickly word spread very soon everybody came to know, and his extended family gathered around him and hugged him tight in relaxation, in relief. Prashant anxiously scanned the mortally battered group. Now Prashant, he worriedly examined the colorful, battered, broken group. He just tried to examine whether all the people were there or not. His brother and sister, his uncles and aunts, they all seemed to be there. And he found that his brother, sister, uncles and aunts all were there. Then, by the next morning, as he took in the desperate situation in the shelter, he decided to get a grip over himself. By the next morning, when he found that the condition of the shelter, it was desperate, he decided to do something himself. When he found that, you can imagine that the people, those who were gathered in that shelter from last 4 days in that flood, what condition might be there. So when Prashant, he found that all the people, they were suffering, they were facing these problems, he just decided to do something. He sensed a deathly grief settling upon the 2,500 strong crowd in the shelter, and he sensed, he found, you can say, he realized that the crowd of 2,500 people that was suffering, there was a death-like grief among those people. Now 86 lives were lost in the village. 86 people in that village were lost or died, you can say. All the 96 houses had been washed away. Washed away they were just washed away in the water or damaged. And all the 96 houses were damaged, destroyed, washed away. It was their 4th day at the shelter, and this was the 4th day in the shelter, or these people, they were staying in that shelter from last 4 days. So far they had survived on green coconuts, and till now they were having only green coconuts to eat. But there were too few to go around such a tumult of people, and it was difficult to do something, and there was a tumult, the noise of people. Now, Prashant, all of 19 years, decided to step in as leader of his village if no one else did. Now, Prashant, who is only 19 years old, he decided to take the responsibility as a leader of his village if no one else will help them or no one else will come. So he organized a group of youths and elders to jointly pressurize the merchant once again to part with his rice. Part with mean get separated. Now Prashant, he organized a group of young and elder people, and they jointly pressurized the merchant. You can say that a person who sells grocery once again to get separated from his rice or to give the rice to the villagers. This time the delegation succeeded. Delegation means that group of people. This time they got success and returned triumphantly, wading through the receding water with food for the entire shelter. Now, this group, which Prashant organized, that group got success in convincing the merchant to give them rice, and they returned triumphantly. Triumphantly means with victory, wading, moving through the water, through the receding. Receding means reducing, decreasing water with food for the entire shelter. Food for all the people, those who were living in that shelter. No one cared that the rice was already rotting. Rotting means spoiling. And nobody cared. Nobody was worried that the rice was, spoiled. Branches from fallen trees were gathered to light a reluctant and slow fire on which to cook the rice. Now they gathered branches from the fallen trees to light a fire to cook those rice. Then, for the first time in 4 days, the survivors at the cyclone shelter were able to fill their bellies, stomachs. And this was first time in last 4 days that the people, those who were staying in that shelter, those who were the sufferers of cyclone, they ate something to the full of their stomach. His next task was to organize a team of youth volunteers to clean the shelter of filth, urine, vomit, and floating carcasses, and to tend to the wounds and fractures of the many who had been injured. And his next action was to organize a team of young volunteers to clean the shelter, because a place where 2500 people were staying and it was water all over there. You can imagine what condition of that shelter might be. So he just was to organize a group of young volunteers to clean filth, urine, vomit, and floating dead bodies, and to tend the wounds and fractures of the many who had been injured, and to look after the people, to care the people, those who were injured, those who were having wounds and fractures. So that's all for today. Rest we'll do later.